I appreciate it a lot. Thank you, Ron. And now
My pleasure.
I know the film begins in Toronto. Are you from Toronto?
Yeah, I live
Oh,
here.
oh, great. Okay.
Originally moved from India. That was years ago, but I live in Toronto, yeah, and I identify as Torontonian for what good that does to me.
That's fair.
Oh,
Well, I really appreciate you chatting with me. Coven is a
no worries.
fascinating film. It really
Yeah, I'm
is.
happy. I'm always happy to chat about the film, and I love interviews and just talking about the process is so much fun. So ask away.
Excellent. I'm just want well, I mean, let's start with how did you come to be associated with the film? Why did you want to tell?
Well, Ed Barwell of Storyline and I have worked on many films together. This is our third film together, and we had a lot of fun making. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's called League of Exotic Dancers. It was a film about aging burlesque dancers in Vegas, and that was opening night film at HotDocs around 4 to 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
after that, we said, it's really fun. Let's do something real fun. And what do we do? And we just literally just, throwing ideas around. And someone said witches. And I was like, actually, witches is really good because I grew up in India. And for me, magic and the supernatural was never something out there. It was always kind of part of our life. Growing up, we were told that there's a female guardian spirit that guards over the women in the family, or we were taken to like shamanistic rituals where there would be these, priests that were dancing or the oracles. And for us, we were like, yeah, and then we just continue our daily life. And then, of course, as a teen, I started reading about King Arthur. Like I was always obsessed, fairly obsessed with the other world, or just reading about, it was just so much fun. And I never thought I wanted to be a witch or anything. It was just a very literary passion for uh, that kind of literature. And then, of course, the more I started researching, I was like, actually, modern day witches, that's such a cool idea. I'm so stunned no one has actually made a film about it. So then the more I researched, I was like, yes. And I realized I wanted to do it with my brand of filmmaking, which is a very feminist lens. Like I like to look at everyday topics or bizarre topics with a very feminist lens, and that just brings a very different angle to things, which I like. So I started thinking, okay, so the film is it's going to be outwardly about witches, but actually it's going to be about women's anger.
Mm.
And then I knew I had like a thesis, a concept, and then I started researching and meeting more people. And that's when, after meeting characters, Laura and Andra, is when I realized that could actually be a film here because, you always start out thinking, huh, that's interesting. I wonder if there's more. Because I make feature length films, it has to have a journey or a quest, something that draws people in. And I think the more I researched, it was very satisfying to find that there actually was a film. Actually, I could have made a series on it. So yeah, I'm very happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, it really is great. And I'm glad you brought that up because the this is very much a film about feminine power.
Yes.
And it's funny, even at the opening of the film, there's an interesting conversation where that they're talking about the church historically, and it says, and there's men who are doing it, but if they were women, and
Yeah.
I just think it's such an interesting thing. Can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that, the role of feminism as it connects with witches and Wiccan beliefs that you?
Absolutely. I honestly think if the major religions of the world had allowed women into the folds very early on, there wouldn't even have been such a thing as witchcraft because which the term witch itself is something that I think Christianity labeled a lot of women because of the whole power for struggle. Because obviously, religions, any man-made institution, is about power,
Hmm.
and I found that women were marginalized. The more history I read, obviously we know about the witch trials, and it was fascinating because the more I read, and I think in the film, the Scottish Lord also says that women of property were labeled as witches a lot because then they could the people accusing her could take away her property.
Hmm.
So it's definitely about property and money and power, and I think It was also about, obviously, it was about Christianity taking over paganism and pushing paganism aside and saying that is evil. And it really is about the binary vision that a lot of religions have, good, bad, Satan, God, that kind of thing. And I think the minute you label someone as witch, then you're okay to stone them to death or to hang them or to burn them, right? So for sure, I think feminism plays such a huge part. And I'm stunned that no one has even made the connection because I think it's so obvious that the more marginalized women got, the more easy they were to be accused or for the townspeople to turn on them. And the witch trials, the Salem witch trials really shows us in a weird way and how easy it was really to just take a perfectly normal housewife and make her a villain. And there's really no, what are you going to say? The devil doesn't visit me at night. Like it's ridiculous. I've been reading a lot about the actual trial, and it's in today's context, it's hilarious. But at that time, I'm sure it must have been scary as hell to be just accused. And yeah, for sure, feminism is such a huge part of taking back that power. I think that women lost by the whole term witchcraft. I mean, witches, actually.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's
Yeah,
fascinating. And one of the things that's comments made in the film is referred to power as power with.
yeah,
I would love to hear your thoughts on that, the idea of power with as a definition of power.
yeah. I loved it when Andra said that because I really think that the wars of the world are created by men.
Hmm.
And for them, it is about power against. But I think women, and I don't want to go to the cliche of saying women are nurturing, and it's not that at all. It's more about us growing all together. And it is about women trying to get back what power they lost. And that's why I find when younger women who haven't really studied the history of feminism ask for things, I'm sorry, you haven't earned it yet. You got to understand what feminism is. It's not about putting men down. It's about bringing women up. It's about equality. You don't have to. Men are not the enemy. It's history and fear that's the enemy. And I think that's what Andra was trying to say. That it's about power with. All we're asking is for a place at the table. We're not asking people to get out or step down or anything. We're just saying include us in discussions, especially about our bodies, include us in discussions about legality. So I think for me, it was always, the film was always going to be talking about the larger experiences of living as women in today's world, because that's why you see very little archive. And I think it works beautifully because initially I did think the film will be a lot about archival footage. We had kept aside a bit of budget for that. But I think because of the modern day witches, they were so articulate and so strong, it just became a story about today's witches, but also about today's women in general. And I find making a film, you need that sort of universality where anyone in the audience, no matter how they identify, has to look at it and say, oh, I get that. I think it's so relevant. So for me, that's very important to make a film that is of today, that is for the younger women today, where my producer's daughter is 16 years old, and I was like very interested in what she thought of the film, because I think that's so important to make feminism interesting for the up and coming generation instead of it being blah blah blah. Like I find that's so scary in the US, where feminism has again been co-opted, and women are made to think that they are evil for not wanting to bow down. So yeah, it's complicated.
Well, and I mean, not only women as well. I mean, the film draws a strong line between Wicca and the LGBTQ community,
Yes,
uh,
absolutely.
which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
fascinating as well. You talk about being on the fringes,
Yes,
and
exactly. And yeah, it is definitely like we did actually have a trans person in our as a character earlier, but they were a little worried that, and they were from the community, the church community. So it's not just coming out as trans, it's coming out as a witch that actually said that their life would be in danger. And I was like, you know what? I don't want, if such a thing happens, like, so then they stepped out of the film, and that was okay. And yeah, so for sure, I think a lot about witchcraft attracts the marginalized communities, you know. And in fact, in one of our Q&As, a man stood up and said, can a man be a witch? As we were like, of course a man. It's not about gender, it's not about race, it's not about color or age. It's more about making things happen and wishing things into existence, that I think, and that's why I don't like labels. I think labels are reductive, and that's what I'm hoping that the film comes across as. It doesn't matter. Again, Wicca I found was again trying to be a religion with rules, a set of rules and dogma, you know. So I don't know if as humans we are drawn to such things where just give me a set of rules and I live by it. You know, it could be easy. It's more difficult to sit down and form your own sense of what the universe is about and what is good and what is bad, right? So I think that's a kind of a humble attempt at that, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we walk with these young women as they connect with their history and ancestry. You know, whether going through Scotland and so many things. But there seems to be a real interest in connecting with history, and they talk about things like their past lives and their connection to Salem and whatnot. What do you think we get today when we connect with our past?
Um, Again, I think going back to my personal culture, um, the ancient cultures had things like ancestor worship.
Mm,
And while I don't necessarily advocate that, I do think we need to know our personal and larger history so that we don't make the same mistakes, but we do revere where we come from, because I think it's so important. And I think that's what the whole search for your history is, where if you don't know where you come from, how do you know where you're going to go to? You know, it's as simple as that. Like, who am I? Why am I here? Is such a fundamental question of existence that I think the minute, like for Laura, the minute she found out, oh my God, like it was unbelievable that she had two witches in her family history. Like, how crazy is that? And I think that's what serves to see, or say Andra going back to Romania, where you see the sadness, you see, the communist regime, and it's so. It's That's why for me the personal is always political. You know, you are shaped by your culture, your history, your personal history, your family history. You know, did your parents believe in bringing up women the same way as men, or daughters as sons? All this actually goes into making us who we are. And for Leilani too, right? She was a very she was always cracking jokes, and but she really, like, and I did not anticipate it. She didn't anticipate it when she went to New Orleans. That facade really crumbled, and I think that was so interesting because it kind of gets to you. It gets to her, and we observing her. It gets to us. You know, even now I choke up every time I see the which is going through that transformation. And yes, for that, that's why I think the past is so important, and what we lost, I think, is also part of that, where histories that are lost to us or that we're still searching for. It's all such a mix, right? And we're hoping that that's what makes it relevant today to us, and to our children and to those who come after. It's just a continuum, and you're only as good as what you are trying to do in a way.
I was wondering, just personally, what surprised you most about this journey as you're deep diving into witch culture?
I think what surprised me most, I still remember, for me, that was really the beginning of the film in a way,
Mm,
when Laura goes into the deep hypnosis.
yes.
It's, yeah, because it was not like I was not supposed to film it. In fact, it was actually a step before that. Let me go back a bit. It was actually when she met the cousin that she's never met.
Okay.
That was the first surprise, because she was, honestly, when I met her, she was just this young witch, and she was like, oh, I'm looking for a coven, and we had no idea. And I was like, I don't want to do something, but I don't know, women wearing black nail polish and saying I'm a witch, so who cares,
Right.
right? It's like,
Right.
yeah, like, whatever. And Halloween, yeah, no one cares. And suddenly one day she was like, I have a cousin and she's been doing a family history. I was like, family history, that could be interesting. And we didn't know what we were going to get, so we went and filmed for whatever it was worth, and suddenly on camera, the cousin says, "You're the great, 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 great granddaughter." We were like, whoa, what just happened? I called up my producer and said, "You'll never believe this." So that was really the start. And then on the way back in the car, Laura says, "You know, Rama, I remember that I told my mother that I think I'm a witch reborn." I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And then I said, "Okay, let's have you talk to your mother. Let's go film that." So really, for me, that was so surprising in a way. It was so shockingly relevant that I was like, "Oh my God, is this really happening?" Because it feels so good and right that it feels fake almost. What if people think I faked it? Because Laura had no idea what was happening. I had no, we were like pulled. You know how you feel when it's like hooked and you're pulled
Yeah.
into the story. And then suddenly she was in this hypnosis and it was uncovering more and more and more. And then we went to Scotland. It was just, so for me, it's really surprising. And that's what I think documentary does so beautifully, where as a filmmaker, you think, okay, so this is the arena I want to play in. But when one of the players starts, really punching it out, like, whoa. So that was a huge and a very good surprise that the film kind of goes into these places which I could not predict. And that's surprising and that's great. So yeah. And then again, Stonehenge for me was, it's not a surprise, but it was something that I loved. Getting 2 hours alone
Yeah.
is in without crowds, because we were thinking of filming there during the summer. Like there were different spots we could film it, but there were such crowds and people partying in Stonehenge. Like we didn't want that in the film. So luckily we got permission for 2 hours early morning. We were there at like 5 a.m. It was so beautiful. That was another very, very satisfying, fulfilling kind of part to shoot. So yeah, so that was pretty much what surprised me. I think the whole film surprises me every time I watch it.
It really is something. It really is. It's a great film, and I really
Thank you.
appreciate it, Rama. Thank you so much for your time. I
Thank you
really
so
appreciate
much.
it.
Okay, thanks so much.
I wish you the
Okay.
best. Have a
I
great
know,
day.
I'm glad we made this work.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. Okay.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.